Welcome to the Surviving to Thriving podcast with Jim Squire. I'm a registered psychotherapist here in Toronto, Canada. And this is actually my 15th episode, and the title of this episode is Exploring Spirituality. Now, I'm going to do a very sort of brief overview of spirituality. A lot of it is from my perspective, but I've kind of broken it down and structured it in such a way to cover some of the areas. There's so much to cover in this, and my goal is really to do kind of an overview. I think I could be here for hours going down different rabbit holes, if I didn't try to sort of summarize it and create some structure in terms of how to address the topic, exploring spirituality. So it's typically agreed upon, and I'm sure some people would disagree with me, but it's typically agreed upon that we have a mind, body, and spirit, or in some cases, soul. To me, those words are interchangeable. And a core belief of holistic health is that these three areas should be nurtured and developed to have good overall health. And I must say, it's a basic tenet of how I personally live. I start and end each day in a deep meditation, connecting with my inner spirit, my inner being. And it's a very therapeutic part of my day. So spirituality is deeply personal. It is unique to the individual and ultimately a very private and personal aspect of our being. I'm certainly not an expert on this topic. I will attempt to give a basic overview. As I said earlier, the terms soul and spirit, in my view, are interchangeable. I'm sure many would challenge me on that. But I don't know of any widely accepted consensus on the terms spirit and soul. So I thought I would just address this to avoid confusion. My experience with this is typically that people have a preference. One term sort of appeals to them more to another term, and that's fine. As I said, it's a deeply personal. I don't feel that anyone has a right to say, one term is right, one term is wrong. So, spirituality has intrigued philosophers, theologians, and scientists, and people in general for centuries. It encompasses beliefs, practices, and experiences that connect individuals with a higher power, God, the universe, or their inner selves. While spirituality often intertwines with religion, it can also exist independently as a secular and philosophical pursuit. In this episode, I'll delve into the prevailing views on spirituality from the mystical and religious to the scientific perspective, shedding some light on this mysterious area of human existence. So I'll start with the mystical and religious perspective. Spirituality for many finds its roots in mystical and religious traditions. That may be where they first heard about their spirit. These perspectives typically involve belief in a divine being or force that transcends the physical world. And here's some key aspects of the mystical and religious view. There again, I've kind of broken this down so it's easy, so we can get through this in a timely way. So the first would be the belief in the divine. Means central to most religious and mystical views of spirituality is a belief in a higher power, a divine entity. This entity often represents a source of meaning, purpose, and morality in human life. The second would be practices and rituals. There's often spiritual practices such as prayer, meditation. These rituals play a vital role in connecting individuals with the divine. And for many, they're a means to connect with the divine. These practices vary widely among different religious traditions. I'm not going to really go into, the different. I'll be there again here for hours doing that. So another key part is moral and ethical guidance. Many spiritual and religious traditions offer moral and ethical frameworks that guide individuals in leading virtuous lives and fostering a sense of community and compassion for others. certainly typically the text, a lot of the the Bible or the Quran will have a lot about how you should live, what is okay, what is not okay, that sort of thing, and people that are deeply devout will adhere to that. The next one is transcendence. Is a core part of spirituality in these traditions is also the idea of transcending the material world to attain a higher state of consciousness or union with the divine. Often it's done through prayer, it could be meditation, but there's a moving to connect with the divine typically. So in terms of the scientific perspective, and there again I'm doing a very brief overview of this because there's so much being done right now in this area. So looking at it through the scientific lens, there's a few key points with the scientific perspective. So neuroscience and consciousness. Science have made significant progress in understanding the neural basis of consciousness and the subjective experiences associated with spirituality. Typically, when they're able to start doing these brain imaging studies, this is where a lot of the growth took place. MRIs and the have given us an opportunity to basically look at someone's brains when they're praying or meditating to get a sense of what's going on. So I know with meditation, they've been able to see there's changes in the brain structure and function, suggesting a neurobiological basis for spiritual experiences. There, unfortunately, though, is a lot that they cannot measure, but at least they're looking at these, trying their best to get a sense of understanding these areas better. So in terms of psychology and well-being, research in psychology has explored the positive impact of spirituality on mental health and well-being. Typically, a lot of studies have shown that people that have a spiritual, are part of a spiritual community or have a belief in spirituality that is meaningful and important to them, often fare better in stressful situations or illnesses, things like this. They have something to kind of lean on or look to for support. Some studies have suggested that a sense of purpose and meaning derived from spirituality can lead to greater life satisfaction and resilience. I've seen a lot of studies that have shown that, and I would certainly agree with that. So another area that's studied is interconnectedness and unity. From a scientific perspective, spirituality also can be viewed as a recognition of the interconnectedness of all living beings and the universe. Ecological and systems theories emphasize the interdependence of all life forms, aligning with spiritual notions of unity. Now, I don't want to get off topic here, but typically in the spiritual, when we're looking at spirituality, one of the things that comes up a lot that leads to this separation, this compartmentalized aspect of living, is the ego. The ego is very much focused on being unique or special in terms of our identities. The ego really struggles with this interconnectedness, this loss of self in the greater connectedness of the whole. And so for me, it's very simple. When we're able to transcend and get out of our ego, interconnectedness, and viewing other people as being part of this interconnected existence is a lot easier. When you're in your ego, it's basically impossible. So most times, this unity focus, it does go hand in hand with transcending the ego. And that's just sort of I'm just adding that myself. It's something that is very simply put that the only way to really start to get aware on a deeper level of how interconnected we are is to get out of your ego. So the next one is human potential. Some scientists have proposed that spirituality represents the untapped potential of human consciousness. It may involve exploring altered states of consciousness, self-realization, an expansion of one's understanding of reality beyond the material world. Now, there is a lot of work being done now with psychedelics with people in therapy where they are able to go into altered states of consciousness, to tap into traumatic pasts or to get just greater levels of awareness. People are taking things like ketamine or mushrooms, DMT. Ayahuasca is another one that I don't know if it's available here, but for years they've been doing retreats down in Peru and in South America where people will go down and take this. And Gabor Mate, that some people may be familiar with, the Canadian author and physician, has been talking about this for years. So there's a lot of retreats down there that specialize in helping people face their traumatic pasts. But there's a lot of people that I ran into somebody just last week that was talking about taking DMT to experience just a different level of consciousness or to connect with different aspects of their being. It's not something I've done personally. Years ago I took mushrooms, but I don't think I was that interested in the spiritual aspects of it. I was just a young person taking drugs and going to nightclubs. So, just to be brutally honest, I don't think I thought much about spirituality back then. So in recent years, there's been a sort of an intersection of spirituality and science. There's been a growing interest in bridging the gap between the two. Especially in my field, there's an emerging field that's often called spiritual science, or the other one that's probably I think people are more familiar with is transpersonal psychology. It seeks to integrate the insights of both disciplines. And here's just some ways that they kind of intersect. First one is, mindfulness and meditation. Most of you who know me know that I'm big on mindfulness. I have a mindfulness course, and I start and end each day in meditation, as I said. So mindful meditation has gained acceptance in both spiritual and scientific communities. Research has shown that these practices can reduce stress, improve focus, and enhance overall well-being. In fact, there's been thousands of studies, I think over 3,000 studies that have shown the benefits of mindfulness meditation in terms of everything from mood to stress to, reducing anxiety and just overall improvement in well-being and sleep. So there's also been a lot of studies showing improved ability to focus. Certainly a lot of the work I do in my course is to help people get better and better at focusing their awareness on specific things and reducing their kind of, the distraction that comes from our overstimulated world. So the other area that I'm very interested in that's emerging is consciousness studies. So they're exploring, I was saying a bit about it earlier, altered states of consciousness, their benefits. Sometimes people are using drugs or medications to assist with that. Sometimes they're not. These states are associated with spirituality, are often investigated for their therapeutic applications and insights into the nature of consciousness. Now, one of the things that I sometimes mentioned on previous podcasts, I personally, when I need to make decisions, I will go into deep meditations, not necessarily reflecting on the question, but I'll come out of it and then I'll reflect on whatever it is I'm trying to figure out. And I often find that the answers I get are much more insightful than they would otherwise be. If I'm in my thinking brain, I'm typically not going to get a very insightful answer. And it's kind of complicated in some respects, but to go into this particular topic, but if you're in your thinking brain, your ego's involved typically, and there's a lot of other things that are being considered when you're making decisions. If you want to just connect with your deeper self or your intuition and get a sense of what direction you should do or what decision you should make, it is often a much purer awareness that comes one that is not sort of skewed by fear and anxiety and the ego and worry about what's going to happen in the future, or what the decision will lead to in terms of consequence or outcome in some way. And that may sound kind of, hopefully that makes sense to you. I've been doing this for a very long time, and it's always the way I make bigger decisions if I have the time to do it. So, well, the other area that's kind of where spirituality and science are kind of intersecting is holistic health. So there's an integrative medicine combines conventional medical treatments with complementary and alternative approaches, including practices like yoga, Reiki, and acupuncture. I did an episode on Reiki a while ago. They address the importance of addressing the whole person, mind, body, and spirit in healthcare, and I'm glad that's sort of increasing, although there is a lot of need for sometimes to have evidence-based results before they will approve these things, but certainly Reiki, acupuncture, and yoga have evidence to support them. So that does make it easier in these, in sort of the healthcare fields to hospitals, etc., to embrace that. So they're starting to get more and more open to trying new things. So I think people are demanding that as well. So they're wanting these treatments, they're wanting a different holistic alternative approach. So in terms of, if you've been listening to this and you're thinking, well, how do I get to connect with my spirit? Maybe I have when I was young and I haven't recently, or maybe I went to church as a younger person or something, and I haven't since, or maybe there was a point where I did and I drifted away from it. So in terms of getting to know your spirit, it's very simple. I often just suggest people start by meditating or sitting in silence and observing their inner self, which only really works if you distance yourselves from your thoughts. So the key to that is really just sit and maybe as a starting point, just observe your thoughts. Just watch what's happening in your thought patterns. Don't attach yourself to any thoughts. Just kind of watch the thoughts come and go and get a sense of what's going on with them. It's very helpful. And then just try to, look inward at yourself. It's going to take some time, but other people have, watched some videos, got some books on different spiritual practices, found a spiritual sort of leader or person that can guide them in this. Whatever it is, I encourage you to explore it. I have several meditations on my YouTube channel that can assist you. It's the therapy_with Jim is the YouTube channel. And if you can't find it, just drop me a line and I will send you a link. And perhaps maybe I'll actually add the link I'll add the link below this podcast when I post it. So, start off by just exploring. The key thing, the most important thing is you are open and curious. If you were judgmental and critical of the process, you'll probably end up it'll be just a waste of time. We have to strive to be open and curious and allow things to unfold, allow things to sort of come to us in whatever way they come to us. It's not something that you sort of sit down and within a certain amount of time you figured it all out. It's an ongoing way of process. So, but it's a wonderful one. I don't know where I would be if I had nurtured the spiritual part of myself. I certainly don't think I would be a very good therapist if I didn't have that part of me. So basically, in conclusion, spirituality it's really an evolving aspect of human experience. It's becoming more and more talked about. I think as a lot of the mainstream churches are evolving too, and there's less judgment, and people are just curious. many years ago, there was a lot of negative view of spirituality, New Age spirituality, things like that, and it was really frowned upon by people often that were religious. So thankfully that's changing. So spirituality encompasses a wide range of beliefs and practices, as I mentioned, and mystical and religious perspectives have deep historical roots for sure, thousands of years. The scientific perspective is more recent, of course, but the neuropsychological and even ecological aspects of spirituality are really interesting. The intersection of spirituality and science holds promise for more holistic understanding of human nature and consciousness. Ultimately, the choice of how to engage with spirituality remains a really deeply personal one that's shaped by your beliefs, experiences, worldview, and it's one that's evolving, I'm sure, for a lot of people. I know myself, even in the last few years, I have evolved, and through working with a couple of individuals now, I've really opened my eyes and grown in so many ways. I've talked before on the podcast about Reiki. I see Julie every couple of weeks, and that is a very big part of my keeping myself functioning, keeping my energy flowing properly. Also, certainly connecting with my spirit. When I come out of those sessions, I feel very detached from the world. I'm not sort of in a negative way. I just am not emotionally connected to things that are happening. I'm certainly connecting with people, but I'm not, going through traffic. Someone's coming in front of me, or I can't find a parking spot, things like this after me. I mean, it doesn't bother me at all. I'm very much detached from a lot of the judgments around, or the stress that comes with day-to-day living. So anyways, that's my take on spirituality. If you have any questions, by all means, I'll be posting this on Instagram and on YouTube and Facebook as well. So, post the questions. I'll do my best to answer them. I'd love to hear any sort of, suggestions or any kind of, for how I can maybe go in deeper with this topic. And I appreciate you listening.